Good morning, good morning, good morning, everybody. Hope everybody enjoyed yesterday's events. I hope everybody got to have a lot of conversations and continue all the great talks and stories and partnerships that were occurring yesterday as I looked around. I have the privilege this morning to get to introduce some amazing people where we can hear about. Can you hear me now? Good. All right. I get the chance to introduce a lot of people this morning that we're going to hear some national, some regional, and some state updates from our conservation leaders. Cynthia Martinez is chief of the National Wildlife Refuge since 2015. As a fifth-generation New Mexican, she is the first woman and Hispanic to lead the refuge system. She began her career with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife System in 1993, which was within the Department of Interior. During her tenure as chief, Martinez has championed the implementation of numerous recommendations from the renewed vision from 2011, conserving the future, wildlife, refuges, and the next generation. This includes transforming and modernizing refuge law enforcement and an internal rebranding effort to ensure that all Americans recognize that wildlife refuges are a necessity for wildlife and humans to thrive. And through a creation and expansion of the Urban Wildlife Conservation Program, she has led efforts to take wildlife conservation to the places where most Americans live, in the cities and in the suburbs. The urban program engages people and communities traditionally excluded from wildlife conservation to provide opportunities to experience nature and strengthen local conservation outcomes. Also, during her tenure, the refuge system has expanded exponentially. When on August 26, 2016, President Barack Obama signed a proclamation expanding Papahanaumokuakea Marine National Monument. The refuge system now encompasses over 855 million acres of lands and waters. Martinez holds a bachelor's degree in biology from New Mexico State University and a master's degree in fisheries and wildlife management from the University of Arizona. Martinez and her husband, Kenny, have a daughter, Keisha, and son, Marcus. Let's welcome Chief Martinez.
Oh my goodness. Can I move this? Jeez Louise, we don't need to talk about me. Thanks, Jonathan. Appreciate that. That was Papahanaumokuakea. You got really, really close. Nice job. I know, right? He did. He tried. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me. I really do feel fortunate to be here with you on the, what is this, the 14th Private Lands Partners Day. Who would have believed that, right? When we started this, right? Especially, you know, coming off of COVID. COVID has been really hard for people. And I mean, goodness gracious, if I would have had to do one more Zoom with Jim where he's like, we can't even get together. Well, I'm happy that everybody was able to join us today, even those that might have made it through North Carolina to get here. Starting in Montana is a little bit different than if you were just coming straight from North Carolina. So glad that everybody was able to make it here. Martha Williams is the director of the Fish and Wildlife Service, and she sends her unfortunate regrets that she wasn't able to be here with you today. But hopefully I'm a good enough stand-in for that. So here I am. So thank you. You know, this is about partnerships, right? And this is about landowners. And I would really like us all, can we please recognize the landowners, the private landowners, the reason that we're here in the room. If you're a private landowner, please stand up. Thank you. Thank you for taking a chance on us, right? Thank you for working with us together. You know, we also can't do it with our partners, right? With our NGOs. If there are NGOs in the room, stand up. We have some NGOs that are working with us. That's right. Stand up. Thank you. Yeah, I'm going to do it. We're the states. If you're working with the state agency, please stand up. Thank you. Tribes, tribal representation. No, I saw you. I wasn't going to leave you out. Where's my USDA people? You working for NRCS, USDA, thank you. Where's my Fish and Wildlife Service peeps? Let's go. All right, there we go. And anybody else from the Department of Interior? I don't want to leave anybody out. Anybody else from any other agency? Thank you. When you all are standing together, that's what Partners is all about. That's the work that we do on private lands, right? You know what's most important is when the agencies and the NGOs, when they're standing together and working together on behalf of the benefit of the private landowner, that's what we're talking about. And I think that's what we heard yesterday. We heard a lot of that yesterday. So thank you all for continuing to work together. So we're here, what are we here for? We're here to listen. We're here to learn. We're here to celebrate private lands conservation, because that's what we do, right? And I saw that in action yesterday when, oh wait, today's Thursday. See, I've already lost track of the days. On Tuesday, when I met with the Partnerscapes board, thank you for inviting us to meet with you, to spend some time, to have those conversations. It's incredibly important to me. And then yesterday, having the opportunity to have conversations at each of the stops. I mean, Tom and I were geeking out on that no-till drill. As soon as he talked about no-till drill, he and I went back there and we were taking pictures, right? I mean, it's like those are those moments where we could have a one-on-one conversation. And Carol, I gotta tell you, so we weren't on the same bus, we're in the same group, but from the first stop, there was always something that her and I had to talk about. And yeah, I'm not telling you, Jim. So, but then last night when the speaker was speaking and she busted me with the look that I had on my face, and we did that eye to eye from across the room, and she knew, I knew exactly what she was thinking. She knew exactly what I was thinking. That's what a partnership is. That's what a relationship is. It is a relationship. And, you know, I will probably never forget the look she gave me because she knew exactly what I was thinking. But that's what you all do on the ground every single day, right? And that's what I think we're trying to impart upon people, that that's the importance of what we do, and that's how we get things done. And folks recognize now, I think, more and more that I grew up in New Mexico. Well, growing up in New Mexico, I mean, knowing the land, working with the land, that was just a given. I mean, I don't know if we learned that. It feels like that's how you grow up, right? So those are the experiences where I come from, where I start from. And yesterday, it just reinforces every time, right, that we cannot succeed unless we listen to one another and we learn from one another, because each of us has something to offer. I mean, success, it comes through the power of partnerships and communication. So what you do is so incredibly important. It provides wildlife habitat, but it also provides clean water and air for all Americans to enjoy. So the Fish and Wildlife Service's mission is to work with others to conserve, protect, and enhance fish, wildlife, plants, and their habitats for the continuing benefit of the American people. What I love about this mission is it really recognizes the critical role that partnerships play in wildlife conservation. This administration's conservation agenda is predicated on supporting and expanding that locally led collaborative conservation efforts. How about that? Locally led collaborative conservation. I believe you all know a little something about that. So we have some additional resources available. Thank you to the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, the Inflation Reduction Act. And these are helping us make significant progress to restore and conserve ecosystems throughout the country. Now, there are even more opportunities for all of us to work together. It's unprecedented. The question is, will we make the best we can of the opportunity that has been given us? America the Beautiful establishes a framework to help address the climate and nature crisis, increase equitable access to the outdoors, and bolster the economy. It's about supporting locally led and voluntary efforts to conserve, steward, and restore lands and waters on local, state, tribal, and private lands. America the Beautiful is about working with communities to identify what conservation programs and projects work well for them. We want to invest in those efforts and stitch them together into a collaborative and inclusive approach to conservation across this country. I share that vision. Why? Because it underscores the importance of voluntary conservation efforts by landowners. And no one knows that better than this audience. But honestly, folks, it's not all rainbows and unicorns. I've been around long enough. There are complex issues and difficult decisions before us. There's wildlife conservation and land management challenges. Achieving the goals identified in America the Beautiful, it requires true collaboration. We need to embrace our diversity, share our ideas, be inclusive, and bring our collective tools and expertise to bear. We need to have the hard conversations and figure out what works best. Partnerscapes is really good at that. I mean, one of the things that as much as I like to give Jim a hard time and tease and have fun, one of the things that Jim has always taught me is that we just need to keep talking. We're not going to figure it out perhaps, but we need to keep talking. That is the opportunity that we have in places like this, wherever we go across the country. We just need to keep talking. We may not have all the answers, but as long as we keep talking, we'll get there. Those who own and work land, they're passionate about the land and have a great deal to offer. Thank you for that. Your communities carry forward generations of knowledge, dedication, and experience achieving conservation outcomes and managing habitat. That's why it's so imperative that we work together. The work you all do plays an important role in keeping working lands whole and healthy, supporting local economies, and providing abundant and diverse populations of wildlife. The Fish and Wildlife Service wants to continue building a culture of trust and collaboration with each of you, with private landowners and across our diverse organizations and interests. We're making good progress, but we do face challenges. Let's find solutions together. We recognize that we can and must do more to lift up conservation efforts on private lands. I challenge you to lend your voices to this dialogue. I sincerely will continue to listen and learn from all of you about how we can best conserve our wildlife and land in partnership. I'm extremely happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you.
Well, Cynthia, thank you so much for those remarks and that challenge that we all keep talking and keep collaborating. Thank you for that. I'm Amanda Mathis. I'm the Assistant State Conservationist for Partnerships with USDA and RCS in Arkansas. And we are, as been said many times already, we're just so tickled to have y'all here. Hope you had a wonderful day yesterday out in the field and got to really experience a little bit of the Ozarks. So glad to have you all here. It's my pleasure to be able to introduce Mr. Clyde Williams. Clyde serves as the Assistant State Conservationist for Programs within NRCS in Arkansas. where he's responsible for improving the delivery of our financial assistance programs and finding ways to accelerate the adoption of conservation implementation. He works closely with leadership at the national, state, and local levels to ensure that our priorities are aligned with that locally led conservation philosophy. He began his career with NRCS in the summer of 2012 as a summer trainee. And over his 10-year career with the agency, he has held positions such as a soil conservationist, district conservationist, resource conservationist, and now in his role as the assistant for programs. Clyde holds a bachelor's of science in regulatory science from the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff. Please help me welcome Clyde Williams.
All right, good morning, everyone. As Amanda mentioned, I'm Clyde Williams, the Assistant State Conference Programs here in Arkansas, and it has been an extreme pleasure to be here this week. I'm here on behalf of our state conservationist, Mr. Mike Sullivan, who sincerely regrets that he could not make it. But a couple of points that I want to make prior to introducing our next speaker is the value that we have for partnerships. You know, it's important, the role that we all play with partnerships, because it helps us to achieve our common goal of helping private landowners address resource concerns across their lands. And perfect example was yesterday during the field tours. We saw real-time examples. Oftentimes we get lost behind the scenes and doing the work. So it's great to get a chance to actually go out there and see the work that's been done. And it reignites the fire in us for doing what we do to help our private landowners. Lastly, before introducing the speaker, I want to sincerely thank Amanda. She has done a great job here in Arkansas to ensure that the communication, collaboration, and relationship with our partners remain strong. So thank you for that, Amanda. And now to introduce Mr. James Tillman, who has served as the NRCS Regional Conservationist for the Southeast region since January 2014. He provides agency and natural resources leadership and support to state conservationists and partners and ensures state is effectively managed an extensive portfolio of comprehensive conservation strategies, which includes implementing NRCS's conservation technical assistance and financial assistance programs on private lands. Tillman's experience includes serving as the NRCS Acting Associate Chief for Conservation, Georgia State Conservationist, California Deputy State Conservationist, and Texas Assistant State Conservation Programs. During his 38-year career with NRCS, he has held positions as soil conservationist, district conservationist, resource conservationist, and USDA 1890 liaison officer. He has worked with NRCS in 7 states, including Kansas, Missouri, Oklahoma, Illinois, Texas, California, and Georgia. You've been around. So without further ado, I want to introduce Mr. Tillman.
First say good morning to all of you, and appreciate you, Mr. Clyde. But let me just mention, like my mom always tells me, she said, it doesn't matter what they put on paper. What matters is what they say about you and where your heart is. So Mr. Jim, all that stuff you heard is, I just remember, to me, Miss Cynthia, I just remember probably about a good 40 years ago, John, in a little small town in Southeast Kansas, where I met up with a gentleman by the name of John Sperlin, a district supervisor, who took me up under his wing when I first came on with NRCS and worked with me, Chris. And we showed me what's important, not just about conservation, but he talked about what's important about people. Amanda Johnson, what's important about people and what's important about Reese, what you do when you go back home, what you do when folks are not looking. So on behalf of, can I say on behalf of my mom, so I have my mom and my dad, you know, I don't want to get emotional with you, but I live, you know, Arkansas is home. I was talking to the chief and I miss Mike. I was in texting Mike, teasing Mike a little bit, but I always tell Mike when I was talking to the chief on the other day, and Miss Amanda, I was talking to him and he asked me, he said, where are you? I said, I'm in Arkansas. I'm in Arkansas. I said, Chris, I'm in Arkansas. You know, you couldn't make it your schedule. And so I said, if you couldn't make it, just I'd modify a few things and I'd be here. But I'm just like that rabbit, Wes. I'm just like that rabbit. Please, whatever you do, don't throw me in that fire patch. Please don't throw me in there. Please don't throw me in there. So I tell you what, this is the place I want to be. I always tell when I was in FFA, I always told them that there's indeed no better place to be on this particular day, Mr. Russell. No better place to be than be right here at this particular moment, at this particular time, working with each of you at a meeting, at a partnership, as Miss Cynthia talked about, Partnerscapes. Because as the chief talked about, and the core of NRCS, and Clyde, you know the core of NRCS, landowner-led. Man, Mr. Reese, I'm not sure. I'm not sure, can we find a better place than being landowner-led, working in partnerships and working together. As I came down and on the other day, Weston, as I walked in the room and I began to see, you know, I'm an introvert, folks. I'm an introvert. So I kind of walked in the room and I found my corner, Jim. And as I found my corner, I began to look across the room. And it's kind of like Ron Alvarado always tells me is that it just seemed like when partners get together, you really can't tell the federal from the state or the producers, because we're all working together for a common good. Look, I think I better go ahead and get to these comments that the chief asked me to make. Look, if you allow me, I need to put these glasses on, Mr. Russell, because now I tell my wife I don't need them, but she reminds me, Matt, she reminds me, Chad, that and she's right. And if she was here down here, I'd tell her she's right. I do need them. I just don't like them. But folks, just like we're doing here today, and as I was on the tour on yesterday, and I thought about partnerships. I was visiting with a gentleman named Mr. Russell, and we were talking, and another one, Mr. Owens, and we were talking on the trailer ride on, I think, the Shrum's place. And I had thought a lot about what we've been doing here and some of the success stories, and talking to Astor and talking to the chief and other folks. And as I visited with Mike a few weeks ago, you know, we talk about partnerships, and you know, we know what Webster said about partnerships, Mr. Reese, and we know what it says. And as I sit on that trailer, as we went down the Shrum place, and some of you remember that, right? And one of the first words I heard out was somebody said, "Tillman, hold on," from way up front. And immediately I began to think, you know what? That's what partnerships is. That's what partnerships is. They immediately knew I was in a tough spot. And they asked me to hold on. And sometime with partnerships, and I did, I held on, and Mr. West, briefly, I got on stable ground. But you know, partnerships are like that. Sometimes you're gonna hit a rough spot, you're gonna hit a snag, and sometimes you just got to hold on. You just got to hold on until you can actually make it. I remember when Chief Cosby came on board, and Mr. Clyde, he came on board, and there's 4 or 5 things he talked about just right off. And as I went on those tours on yesterday, I thought about that. He talked about, be sure that every producer, the forestry, we're talking about forestry, you're talking about poultry, West, whether you're talking about those small farmers, to be sure everybody have an opportunity to participate. And as I visited with Miss Cynthia the other day, we talked about that same thing, being sure that everybody, all the partners, that we do what's best by listening to the producers, and then we'll know what's best. But he talked about equity. He talked about equity, about being sure that the forestry, that all those avenues that we follow up on those, and me and you we had a conversation on yesterday. He talked about increased assistance as related to climate smart. Reginald, he talked about that farmers and ranchers have been doing resiliency for, well, I don't know how many centuries. And as Mr. Jeff talked about yesterday on his poultry operation, he said, you know, he said, I've got a multi-million-dollar operation here. He said, you bet. Clyde, you heard him. He said, you bet. I'm going to do what's best. I'm going to maximize the opportunities. Mr. Russell, there in East Colorado, you got a farm. You've been there. You told me that's what you know. I could feel that passion. That reminded me, not only when I go back home, but that reminded me of the conversation me and Tom Watson and Ron Alvarado had, is that our producers, that our employees need to listen more, to adjust mandate. The things you talked about, the things Mike Sullivan talked about, all the stakeholders you talk about, being listening so we can move forward. The chief is pushing that He's pushed expanded conservation tools. Oh, you know the story. Work with farmers and ranchers, working with producers, whether dealing with wildlife, we're dealing with traditional crops, we're dealing with the rice community. We got to use every tool in the toolbox. And sometimes we have to add to the toolbox. So in essence is equity is a consideration in all we do, everything we do here today. And the chief wanted me to make it very clear to each of you that his staff works for you. That the funding that comes out, that will be coming out, that will be rolling out, and all the comments I make, they're not, Mr. Owens, they're not about NRCS. Nothing that I've mentioned talks about NRCS Helen independently. NRCS, same thing Ms. Cynthia talked about, we cannot make without the partnership. We can travel as many roads we want to, Jim, but without private lands and without the leadership, Mr. Russell, of farmers and ranchers. Because you can do something for me that I can't even do for myself. And I tell that story everywhere I go. I got 4 grandkids, and I can do all I can, West, for them, all I can. And it's still not enough, because only you can provide the food and fiber that they can survive. Other things I can do. So I want to thank you. I want to thank you for the work you do. I want to thank you for looking out, not only for me, but all of us, even when we're not thinking about it in those late hours. And thank you for the work that you do. I want to mention in terms of cooperative agreements, and I think the chief's going to be doing a number of cooperative agreements with the partnership, with the partners. So put a lot of money out there. I think probably this past year he put 50 million out there. I think we had 118 partnerships that got involved in that. I think 85 of those were new. About 33 of those were traditional partnerships. You're going to see more of that. I think state conservations, we're asking you to work with your state conservations. I think the chief mentioned the other day is that, Reginald, that all the dollars, I think Mr. Reese, you like that, all the dollars are going out to the state conservation, one of the states. That's where, John, the work's going to be done. That's where the agreement's going to be. Now, there may be a few agreements at national headquarters, but they'll be in conjunction with our state conservationists. Let me also add, too, in terms of, that's been a big focus, that's working lands for wildlife. I mean, that's huge. All the places I've traveled, all the places that I've been have been partnership. That particular program, not that program within itself, but that program, what it encompasses and what the partnership does in terms of working together. It has involved more contracts on more than 7,400 producers, more than 10.2 million acres, and that's conservatively speaking. So folks, the impact that you have, the impact this partnership has, and the words that Ms. Cynthia talked about, the word that Clyde talked about, we're going to be working even closer together. So when this money is rolled out, when these funds are rolled out, we want you to work with the state conservation, work with the partners, work with the state partners, because we're going to come together and make those things happen. You know, NRCS works in all the districts, at all the counties, at the Pleasure Soil and Water Conservation District. They're key to our delivery system. That's that locally led process that Wes, that you talk about, that you push. And then Chris, in terms of strong partnership we have here in Arkansas, that we have all across this great country because of Soil and Water Conservation District and our other state partners. Let me wrap up, but let me say this. We want to highlight in terms of what the secretary talked about in terms of his announcement not too long ago. I think they had over $20 billion worth of requests in terms of the Partnership for Climate Smart Practices. Isn't that something? In the title of that, we put partnerships, right? And he put partnerships first because he wanted to know, he wanted to share how important partnerships were, Jim. He wanted you to know. And he reiterates us every day and demands that we express and we show how important partnerships are. And not only $1 billion were intended, but he went back and ultimately put in 2.8 billion and ultimately be about 3 billion in that. That says a lot. for this team right here, for this partnership right here. Because I think, as Dr. Vic mentioned the other day, in terms of some potential funding or funding that they got and some efforts that they're moving forward with, it's going to impact us here. Not only that particular partnership activity, but opportunities that are coming up. Let me close with this. As we look at the Inflation Reduction Act and that particular funding, you know, I think about, I mentioned John Sperling earlier, right? And I'll say this very quickly. You know, every time I drove, we went to all the meetings together, district supervisor north of Girard, Kansas. And all the meetings we went to, I used to drive up, park my government car, and I ride with him. And he had a little old dog. I guess I only got a couple minutes, but he only had a dog about that tall. And he always, the dog was named Potterborn. Every time I come in the yard, that dog would chase me in the house. And he said, "That's a dog, half a dog tall and half a dog wide." You know, we laughed about that, but what he was really doing to me was building partnerships. There's nothing that I wouldn't do for John because of that partnership. And Reese, that's why I feel it with you. It doesn't matter what you bring up. It doesn't matter what it is. We're going to continue to communicate, and somehow we're going to work our way through it. And me and you talked on yesterday, backseat to backseat in terms of the on the bus. Folks, we're in this thing together. I think Cynthia talked about it, Clyde talked about it. We're in this thing together. And the chief has been very clear. He's been very clear to us that partnerships are more important than anything we do, because ultimately, and you said it, partnerships will lead us to all the other things that we're trying to get to. And if we listen to producers, we'll get it right. Just a few dollars, approximately $20 billion will be coming from this Inflation Reduction Act. We call it IRA. The largest single investment in history. Amanda, we're trusting that, and we know that here in Arkansas, we're going to get it right. Montana, let's go on, Josh. We're going to get it right. All across this great country, that money is going to start coming out to each of you and those priorities that you got set. Let's move forward. Let's move forward together. Let's work on those. Because oftentimes when I go back, and I'll end with this, I go back west, and my mom and dad still, my dad turned 90, be 91 November 3rd, my mom 87, and and they always ask me, they always say, you look, every time you look around, you're going somewhere, but what are you really doing? And then I said, Mom, you know, I try to spend most of my time listening. She said, well, what are you listening? I said, Mom, you know, I'm listening to farmers and ranchers. I'm listening to folks who got sons and daughters, who've invested everything they have in what they got. And I'm listening for everything I can gain, Reese, to help me do a better job, so that I can deliver. Not because I come into work at 8 o'clock or 6 o'clock or 5 o'clock and go home, whatever, but because of that commitment that they've got and I got, Corey, to be sure that we do everything in our power to do all we can, that we be a pathway and not a hindrance. Folks, I want to thank you for what you do. On behalf of Chief Cosby, I want to thank you for what you do on behalf of Ron Alvarado and Tom Watson and Mike Sullivan. I can go through all the names of Amanda, but I want to thank you for what you do on behalf of American people, because it is each of you that really addresses America's security. Folks, as I said to my mom when she asked that question, I said, Mom, it's been good. It's been a good ride. And you and Dad raising me right. And the farmers and ranchers put the finishing touches on it. Folks, thanks so much for all the work you do. Appreciate you, and have a good day.
Thank you, Mr. Tillman. There's definitely something to say about being invigorated after being together with partners who have the same vision. Leo Miranda, the Regional Director for Region 4, sends his deepest regards that he cannot be here today. We all know what's going on in Florida. He is with our Fish and Wildlife Service family down in Florida, helping them with all the hurricane damage that has happened there. So I have the pleasure to introduce both Melvin Tobin and David Gonzalez to fill in for him. Melvin received his Bachelor of Science degree from Benedict College in Columbia, South Carolina, and his Master's of Science degree from Louisiana Tech University in Ruston, Louisiana. And his master's degree from Louisiana Tech. Oh, I'm sorry. I just messed that up. Let me start again. He received his Bachelor of Science degree from Benedict College in Columbia, South Carolina, and his Master's of Science degree from Louisiana Tech University in Ruston, Louisiana. He has 41 years of research and wildlife management experience. He began his career as a chemical research technician and served as a reproductive white-tailed deer biologist for 8 years with the South Carolina Department of Natural Resources, where he directed and supervised a captive breeding program for white-tailed deer. He began with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service 33 years ago. He started with the service as an intern assigned to the black bear capture project at the Kennesaw River National Wildlife Refuge. He later became a permanent Fish and Wildlife Service employee at Kennesaw as their private lands biologist. And he later accepted a position in Arkansas at the Conway Ecological Services Field Office as the first Partners for Fish and Wildlife state coordinator that the state had, and eventually has become the state coordinator. Dave Gonzalez is the Partners for Fish and Wildlife Regional Coordinator in the South region, here in Region 4. And began his career in the National Wildlife Refuge System, working across the state of Washington, where he eventually moved it to Virginia and worked at the NCTC, and currently works and resides in Atlanta. Dave and his wife, Lori, and daughter, Naomi, recently came to Arkansas and toured the great resources that we have here, and he's grateful to call the Southeast home. And with that, I give you the best field supervisor that we have, Melvin Tobin.
Thank you, Jonathan. A half a dog wide and a half a dog high. Mr. Tillman, when I get through with this, I'm going to take some notes and I'm going to steal that one from you. Before I get started, I'd like to recognize at least 3 of my staff members that are here. 2 of my partners, biologists, Jonathan Baxter, who is the state coordinator for the Partners program. And then there is Spencer Weitzel. Spencer, where you stand up. And there's Spencer. Spencer is newly on board. And then my deputy field supervisor, Chris Davidson. Chris gave the opening remarks the day before yesterday. And I'm real proud of my staff. And there are 2 people I would like to at least mention. One is he's newly retired, and he's Joe Christophic. And then there's Nicole Hardiman. Joe Christophic was the predecessor of Jonathan, and he basically, I guess, gave that little spark to get this going. And I'm just so happy that Jonathan was able to pick the torch up and run with it. I think he's done such a wonderful job. Let's give him a hand for that. I've got the opportunity to stand in for Leo, who is our regional director. Leo and I, we basically came into the program together doing the Partners for Fish and Wildlife program. And as a result, we were able to really get a lot done here, in the Southeast. And there are several Southeast Partners biologists that are here, as well as Fish and Wildlife Service employees from the Southeast. Those of you from the Southeast, stand up, please. Thank you. I would like to lead with this particular quote from Aldo Leopold. He is the father of wildlife conservation. And this is how it goes. He says, "We need to recognize the landowner as the custodian of public game on all private lands. Compensate him with either cash, service, or protection for the use of his land and for his labor, on the conditions that he or she safeguards the public interest. We saw that yesterday on the field trips, on the field trip that we took yesterday. There were some very interesting areas that we went to, and I learned a lot. This is, today is going to give me an opportunity to talk a little bit about the Partners Program. The Partners Program is the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service primary mechanism for delivering voluntary underground habitat improvement projects on private lands for the benefit of federal trust species through alliances between the service, other organizations, and individuals while leaving the land in private ownership. What are federal trust species? Migratory bird species, fish species of special concern to the service, endangered, threatened, or candidate species, species proposed for listing, at-risk species, and marine mammals. Some of the principles of the Partners Program, it's voluntary. It works on private and tribal lands. There's habitat restoration, enhancement, and protection. There's application of state-of-the-art techniques, leveraging resources through partnerships, collaboration of public and private resources, environmental, economic, and social benefits. There's also keeping common species common and restoring habitat for declining species. There's also providing natural resource management, teaching and learning opportunities. It's self-sustaining. And at least 70% of the dollars go on the ground. And we tend to work with Native communities. Some of the goals of the Partners Program was to improve the quality and quantity of habitat for federal trust species through voluntary partnerships, directly involve private landowners in proactive stewardships of federal trust species habitat. And the origin of the Partners Program, it goes back roughly during the 1960s when there was the Wetland Acquisition Program. Roughly around 1978, there was a Mid-Continent Waterfowl Management Project. During the 1980s, there was the Farm Bill and the North American Waterfowl Management Plan. In 1989, there was the Private Lands Program. And the Partners Program, before it became the Partners for Fish and Wildlife Program, in 1991, it was the Partners for Wildlife Program. In 1998, it became the Partners for Fish and Wildlife. When I first moved here to Arkansas, I moved here as a private lands farm bill coordinator from Louisiana. And when I came on with the Fish and Wildlife Service in 1989, I came in working basically in private lands. But upon arriving here in Arkansas, I have had the opportunity, along with Jonathan, Joe Christophic, as well as some of the other partners biologists that we've had in the state that works for the Fish and Wildlife Service out of the Arkansas Ecological Services Field Office. We've had an opportunity to work on bottomland hardwood reforestation, wetland restoration, rare and declining habitat types. We've had a chance to work with restoration, enhancement, and protection of habitat for migratory birds, fish, bats, mussels, pollinators, etc. Then there's the stream bank stabilization. Jonathan here has done a lot of aquatic work. There's the bioremediation of brine impacted areas, such as down in South Arkansas around El Dorado. There's outdoor classrooms that I've had a chance to actually participate in, as well as Joe Christophic when he was our state coordinator. Then there's restoration of riparian and floodplain areas. And then there are cave gates, fences to protect cave adapted species. I've got another biologist, which is up in Northwest Arkansas. His name is Pedro Ardapple. Pedro is our karst biologist, and he's had a chance to work with numerous cave projects. He and Jonathan and others that have had a chance to work with him out of the office, as well as some of the other state, federal, and NGO agencies as well. Then there's prescribed fire. Jonathan, if memory serves me right, what your fire boss on some of the prescribed burns and things like that. So he's done a lot with that. And so there's restoration, enhancement, protection of habitat for threatened, endangered, or rare species. I'm proud of the opportunity to stand in for our regional director. And like I said, like Johnson said, we're sorry that he was unable to be here. And picking up the torch from here is going to be David Gonzalez. David.
Thank you, Melvin, and thank you, everyone. I want to say also, I appreciate the reference to our Florida family, as well as our Puerto Rican family. We have two great folks here from Puerto Rico and some folks from Florida, and we just want to say our hearts are with you all and your families. So thank you so much for being here and being present. Shows that dedication we're talking about. Chief Martinez, Cynthia Martinez made mention this earlier this week when we had the privilege to sit in the meeting with the board members. And I don't quite remember the comment verbatim, but what I took away from the conversation is, we kind of need to know each other we got to know each other before we need each other. That was the sentiment that came across, right? And as I look across this room, I got to meet some great folks. A gentleman from Upper Utah, a Chucker friend of mine now, Chucker Hunter. Good to meet you. A wonderful lady from Montana who's doing great work with the ranchers and farmers over there. It was a pleasure to meet you too, Angel. And then I look across some of the other great folks in Vidalia that I had a chance to meet, Vidalia, Georgia. And then Mr. Jim Stone, who's repeatedly told me, call me Jim, not Mr. Stone, so it was a great way and a great venue for me to get to know you before you need me, right? It's building that partnerships. We've talked about it many times today. It's the investment in each other that is worthwhile. And I feel very privileged to be here, to be a part, and to listen and learn. And I'm very grateful. I like watching YouTube, I'll be honest with you, in fair transparency. But amongst many of the things I get to view and see, there was one automobile commercial, I forget what it was, but the ending tagline says, "Courage takes criticism. Let's bring on the conversation," right? And that's what we're doing today. What a great opportunity to have those difficult conversations, to ride in the car with other people, to understand what it is that they need. One of the farmers yesterday said, when the NRCS person calls me, I answer the phone because he knows what's in my best interest. And you can't do that, by going 50 and driving down the road and waving high. It takes that dedicated investment in relationships. So courage takes criticism. Let's bring on the conversation. I mean, I even heard it last night. Why didn't we do this 40 years ago? Where were we at? We should have had these conversations. Well, someone did. Someone had the courage to say, we need to get together. And I want to say thank you to that. And thank you for this conversation because, and our partners biologists will tell you, I say this ad nauseum here in the Southeast, but we are better together than we are apart, right? And you'll hear from our regional director, Leo, he always will say too, there should be no daylight between us and our partners. That's how tight we need to be. And that's how tight we want to be. So as the regional coordinator for the Partners for Fish and Wildlife Program, I want to thank you for the opportunity to come to the Southeast region. Welcome you to the wonderful Southeast region. Again, we are only where we're at because of our great people we get to work with in North Carolina, in Arkansas, Puerto Rico, Florida. I'm looking across the landscape here in the Southeast with pride. And I also look across the rest of the room with humility, saying, how can I rise to the challenge? And thank you for raising that bar so we can rise to that challenge. And so as I move on, I'd like to share some highlights that have been accomplished here in the Southeast over the past 35 years in the Partners program. You know, here in the Southeast, we have restored or enhanced 471,000 acres of upland. We have restored or enhanced over 156,000 of wetland habitat, 156,000 of acres of wetland habitats. And we've restored or enhanced over 1,200 miles of rivers across 3,600 projects. We've also contributed over $45 million to these projects in over 35 years. But our biologists in the Southeast were able to leverage a total of $128 million in match. That's the power of partnerships, right? We come together and we all work together. And Cynthia, you talked about how us and NGOs, when we get together and we go to those landowners, and how that's that unity that we have. And imagine the things that we can do and have done. And thanks to you all here in the Southeast. We've provided habitat improvements for over 309 federally listed species. You have provided habitat improvements. And then specifically in Arkansas, you have restored over 8,400 acres of upland habitats, 19,600 acres of wetland habitats, 98 river and stream miles across 376 projects over the last 35 years. You all have a lot to be grateful for, proud of, and I am humbled to come in and be a part of this organization and sit there and listen and learn and take it in and build those relationships and invest in people. Because, right, courage takes criticism. Let's bring on the conversation. Let's have those difficult conversations, because we are better together than we are apart. So thank you very much again. Our regional director sends his thank you, I can tell you that. And grateful for the opportunity to be here and learn. Y'all have a great day.
Thank you, Melvin. Thank you, Dave. I get the privilege to introduce Austin Booth as a native of Scott, Arkansas. He became the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission's 19th director in its 106-year history on July 1st, 2021. Booth served as a captain in the United States Marine Corps in multiple capacities from 2011 to 2019, including a 2015 to 16 deployment to Afghanistan. He comes to the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission after 18 months as Chief of Staff of the Chief Financial Officer at the Arkansas Department of Veteran Affairs, where he oversaw financial functions as well as internal operations of the department. He is a graduate of the Citadel in Charleston, South Carolina, and received his Juris Doctor from the University of South Carolina School of Law. Booth says he was fortunate to grow up in Arkansas, where hunting and fishing and conservation are an important part of the culture. The outdoors have always been a part of my life, and I can't remember a day when it wasn't there, he said. In addition to bass fishing, duck hunting, and deer hunting, Booth enjoys taking his 2 daughters and son along for trips to Greers Ferry Lake for catfish and other species on jug lines. It's a great way to get the kids out and enjoy time on the water, Booth said. They always get excited to find the lines and see what's on the end of the hook. I can't think of a better way to start the day than on the lake. Being a Lonoke County native, it's no surprise some of Booth's fondest memories of the outdoors involve and center around duck hunting. Without further ado, I introduce Austin Booth.
All right, good morning, everybody, and thank you for that warm introduction. What was not in that introduction was the fact that during my 8 years in the Marine Corps, I regularly followed your next speaker around, Wes Ward. And so I was always following him, and people would say, "Hey, do you know Wes Ward? It's that other Marine from Arkansas." I'm like, "No, I don't." But we finally caught up with each other later in my career. So it's good to actually be in front of Wes for once, even though he leads me in looks, talent, age, and rank. Really good to be here. Glad that this event has come back together since the pandemic, and even more glad to host it here in Arkansas. This is just fantastic timing for us as an agency to host this event, because private lands management is on the very front of our radar right now. In July, we released a new strategic plan for the agency called Natural State Tomorrow. And Natural State Tomorrow is really built around two things. It's trying to wrest the agency away from what I call the tyranny of the urgent, a posture where we are under-resourced to meet the challenges of today. Just we're not really unique in this compared to other government agencies, where we just sometimes have this inherently reactive posture. That's in one category, and the other category is how do we grow? How do we defeat the tyranny of the urgent now so that we can grow in the future to where the natural resources and Arkansans need us to be? And a perfect example of how we see undertaking both of those tasks in Natural State Tomorrow is through private lands. We have an incredible team of private lands biologists. See many of them here this morning, which makes me happy. And then on the terrestrial side, or sorry, that's on the terrestrial side. On the aquatic side, we have a team of folks that just focuses solely on bank restoration. So in the last fiscal year, our private lands biologists did 794 site visits. They contracted over 70,000 acres. Our deer management assistance program had under roughly 1.3 million acres under management. On the aquatic side, we restored roughly 127 miles of banks. That was on 72 different water bodies in 43 of Arkansas's 75 counties. So we're tremendously proud of the work that our private lands focused conservationists have done. But it stings a little bit when I'll tell you how many PLBs we have. We have 9, all right? 9 for 75 counties. And so in Natural State Tomorrow, we were proud to say that we are going to create our own private lands division. We're going to pull private lands out from Wildlife Management Division. We're going to elevate them in the organization and grow them into what we believe private lands should be in Arkansas. So what does that look like actually implemented? Well, the first thing is we need more PLBs. They've done an incredible amount of work with the PLBs that we've had. I just need to carbon copy them. So in the next 2 years, we hope to add at least 5 PLBs. But my ultimate goal beyond the next biennial budget would be to grow this division where one PLB has only 2 counties under his or her jurisdiction. The second thing that we're going to do is we're going to have PLBs that have within their focus solely conservation opportunity areas. As we look forward towards RAWA and the emphasis that it puts not only on landscape, but also on species of greatest conservation need, we believe that we need to put our money where our mouth is and make these COAs really the focus of much of our private lands effort. Secondly, we're going to have a focused deer management assistance program team of PLBs. Right now, that DMAP program is largely administered through the PLBs that we have. And so it's very much a collateral duty for them to focus on deer clubs and also on landowners at the same time. The DMAP program is a huge opportunity for us in the state of Arkansas, not only to help sportsmen increase the quality of their deer herd, but is also an open door for us to talk about NRCS programs and other opportunities for our partners. And then in addition to that, we are going to have some habitat focused teams where when we talk about readiness, we're really talking about capacity, right? So when we talk about funding opportunities like the Infrastructure Reduction Act or RAWA or America the Beautiful, having the resources is one thing, but having the capacity to deliver it is another. And so through these habitat focused teams that we really hope to be pinch hitters that are in addition to the growth on the PLB side, we're after one thing, and that's capacity. So I've kind of talked about what that, sorry. And one more thing that my beloved partners in NRCS might be happy to hear. We're going to hire a Farm Bill coordinator within that private lands division that can help coordinate our Farm Bill applications internally and also work with NRCS directly. So they have one point of contact where we make sure that we're having the true impact that we can through NRCS. So all of that is about what private lands looks like in the future from the agency's perspective, but I think I have to talk about what that might look like going forward from Arkansas's perspective. I was at one of our oversight hearings with our legislature last month or so, and I was walking them through some of Natural State Tomorrow and what that looks like going forward. And I had to talk about private land since that's such a critical piece of where we want to go in the future. And what I told them was that Arkansas is 90% privately owned. And so if we obtain management perfection on public lands, we will truly not be having an impact on the resource. That if we really want to conserve the things that we're charged with conserving, we have to do more. And one of the legislature, he's a rancher, and he had no idea that we had a private lands division. And that stinks. So from the public's perspective, we have to do a much better job of fanning the flame, of ensuring that people know not only what the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission does, but what our partners do, and more importantly, what we do together as a team. This is why I am excited about what our future looks like in partnership with the Department of Ag. Arkansas is the natural state, and that's something that we're very proud of. You can see that in the ethos of our sportsmen, but you can also see it in our industry as well. You can see it in the timber production in South Arkansas, the ranching and the beef production in this part of the state, and you can see it in the fields of the eastern part of the state: rice, corn, soybeans. And so we have to do a much better job as an agency talking about conservation on working lands. So that will be a primary focus of our private lands division. But coming back to that interaction that I had with the legislature, we have to do something more than just tell our story. And we have to do something more than tell the story of our partners. And that's why roughly a year ago, we started working on an effort to bring more state level incentives to private landowners, to working landowners, to farmers, to producers. How do we bring more incentives to them to undertake what we know as an entire room to be conservation best practices? So I'm going to unashamedly leave that as a teaser for now. We started working on that a year ago, and we have big plans for our legislative session coming up. For all the challenges that we have, I believe that the greatest opportunity we have And the thing that gives me the hope that we will succeed is not RAWA. It's not America the Beautiful. It's not the Inflation Reduction Act, the Infrastructure and Job, yeah, IIJA. Yeah. It's not the funding that might be on the horizon. It's what the people in Arkansas are made of. And I commented on this earlier, where we are very proud to be in a state that has the conservation sales tax. We're very proud to be in a state that has Amendment 35 that elevates conservation to the place that it is. And for all the funding out there, what's most important are Arkansans. And we take being the natural state incredibly seriously. And that's a way of life for people here. So we are excited about private lands going forward, about how we can fan the flame of conservation in Arkansas, because it's alive and well in every landowner we have. So thank y'all for the invitation, and I can't wait to hear Wes be introduced.
Great. Thank you, Austin. That's fantastic. We're excited about the future of private lands and want to be right there with you, helping you fan the flames. But I will say, maybe we don't need to clone Bubba. I'm not sure the state is ready for 2 Bubba Groves. So, but it is my pleasure to introduce Wes Ward. Wes is serving as our 3rd Secretary of Agriculture for the state of Arkansas, and he was appointed to that position in 2015 by Governor Asa Hutchinson. And the Department of Agriculture includes our Forestry Commission, the Livestock and Poultry Commission, the Natural Resources Commission, the State Plant Board, the Board of Registration of Foresters, the Board of Registration of Professional Soil Classifiers, and our Veterinary Medical Examining Unit. So he is a very busy man. He's a very busy man, but he really does embody the dedication and the services that the Arkansas Department of Ag are devoted to, which is developing and implementing policies and programs that really benefit Arkansas's agriculture, our forestry, and our farmers and ranchers. Wes is from a small town in Lake City in Northeast Arkansas. He holds a bachelor's degree in ag business from Arkansas State University, but then he also has a law degree, a master's of laws degree, and a master's of science degree from the University of Arkansas. So I bet you're glad to be back up in this neck of the woods for a little while. And as Austin mentioned, obviously a very distinguished service in the United States Marine Corps for over 20 years. He's completed deployments and training exercises in Afghanistan, Jordan, and Japan, and he's currently serving in the Marine Corps Reserves. Please help me welcome Secretary Wes Ward.
Well, thanks, Amanda. I appreciate that, and I've dreaded following Austin, so appreciate your remarks, and always good to serve with another Marine, and just want to make a few comments. And the worst part about being last on a panel of speakers like this is there's a great group of folks that already talked to you. They've already talked about everything that was on my list to mention. So the good thing for you is that my comments will be fairly short. So I'll try to get to the point, but I do want to share just a few points as I was just listening and writing things down as the speakers were talking. One, I want to mention the Marines, and I don't know if we have any other Marines in here or not. There we go. Semper Fidelis. Oh, we got a few. You know, when we talk about partnerships, where, you know, for me personally, where does some of that training and mentality come forward with partnerships? And this, you probably don't care about this, but it's something that's so special to me, and I know the Marines as well. The Marine Corps operates as a MAGTAF, a Marine Air Ground Task Force. It's all about partnerships. It's all about, hey, what do I have? What do you have? How do we work together to accomplish the mission? And so we take that very seriously. And so certainly part of who I am, I know part of who Austin is, and part of all the Marines that are here, and something that's special to us. And the other part about the Marines too is that we're the smallest branch of the service, which means we every time have to do more with less. And so it's also, you also see that a lot in working with partnerships, especially on a lot of things that y'all are familiar with. And so I appreciate those who are serving and have that mindset, because we all share that, whether you've been in the Marines or not, we all share those same common values of doing more with less and finding ways to work together to accomplish things that are important to us. And so I appreciate that. I know that we're on the second day of your conference, but I do, or maybe the third day, I guess, the last day, but I do just want to say welcome to Arkansas from Governor Hutchinson. And you know, I've been able to spend the last few days with the governor. Last Thursday, he did a forestry event, and then he did a rice event, and then on Monday, he did a Century Farm event, and on Tuesday, he did a meat event. We were up here yesterday talking about livestock, and last night talking about agriculture exports. So the governor's been talking about ag and conservation a lot, actually. And so we were at one of the meetings yesterday, and he looked at me and said, "Wes, I feel like I'm an employee of the ag department." And I said, "Well, I appreciate that, sir. It's very important." He goes, "I know it's important, that's why I'm doing it." So you know, just I do want to echo just from him. I know he wishes that he could be here, but after so many days doing ag stuff, he told me he had more important things to do today that he had to get to, that he keeps putting off. And so he wishes he could be here sincerely. And thank y'all for being in Arkansas. So just a welcome from him as well. You know, and I think I mentioned the governor for a couple of reasons. One, he's the chief executive officer of the state of Arkansas. But two, it starts at the top. It starts with people who are in leadership positions. And I know that all of y'all are fulfilling a very similar role and leading and helping to push a message forward. For us in Arkansas, it's the governor, and something that he takes very seriously and talks a lot about how important agriculture is and conservation is. You know, agriculture is our state's largest industry. It's important not just for us in Arkansas, but it's important across the country. And so we're glad that y'all are here. We're glad that we're having this conversation. And when you look at, you know, why is it important? You know, can we just turn that switch off and say, you know, agriculture and conservation is not important anymore? No, we can't, because we all have to eat. We all rely on that industry to provide the food, fiber, the fuel, and the shelter that we all depend on every single day. And y'all are the ones who are helping to make sure that that's there, and that will continue to be there into the future. And so we appreciate that, and the governor appreciates that. That's why he spends so much time talking about agriculture and conservation and trying to help wherever he can on that end. From a state perspective in Arkansas, I do want to share, you know, mention the governor. And so one thing he did, and conversations that we've had with him several times, just looking at the importance of the industry, one thing he's relayed to us is that producers, we're talking about private lands, talking about producers have enough on their plate already. They don't need the state or the federal government to say, here's one more thing you've got to do. Here's one more thing we want to, you know, nitpick you about. We want to be partners. We want to help them be successful, but it's not just coming in constantly and trying to tell them they're doing something wrong or trying to shut down their operation. It needs to be the opposite of that. And that's where the partnership is so important, making sure that producers, the private landowners are successful, that they're accomplishing the goals and things that they want to accomplish. And that really is the role of government and others to help do that. And so I wanted to mention that, you know, another thing that the governor did in Arkansas was a couple of years ago, did a Transformation and Efficiencies Act. We talked about our Natural Resources Commission. We talked about Forestry Commission. So the governor really brought those together as part of that Transformation and Efficiencies Act, again, saying producers and private landowners have enough on their plate. They don't need to have to go to 20 different places to try to get an answer and get 20 different answers while they're in the process of doing that. So brought forestry and natural resources together. So we've got our Natural Resources Director, Chris Call-Claser, is here. And so we've got a lot of our forestry folks. I see them here in the room as well. And so it is a good partnership to work together and be successful, and to help our industry and our producers and our private landowners to be successful. The last thing I wanted to mention, you know, we've talked, you know, there's been a lot of talk about, you know, whether it's the Inflation Reduction Act or IIJA or farm bills coming up. That's another big one. There's lots of opportunities that are out there now and that are coming into the future. And that's where I think partnerships are also incredibly important as well. We spent last week with the National Association of State Departments of Agriculture, each of you coming from your different states. We had either the Secretary, Commissioner, or Director from your respective state all got together last week in New York, and so had very good conversations there. And we talked a lot about the Farm Bill, and, you know, how do you be successful in the Farm Bill? How do you get things accomplished? You have to show support. You have to show that people are working together and that more than one person is wanting something. And so that's where a State Department of Agriculture, that's where working with USDA and our federal partners, the more that we can be on the same page, the more that we can communicate and agree on things, the more likely it is that those sort of things will be adopted by our congressional members in the next Farm Bill. And so certainly don't hesitate to reach out to us as an organization, whether it's in Arkansas as the State Department of Agriculture, and your respective states in the State Department of Agriculture. We certainly want to be a resource for y'all, but a lot going on. Y'all talked about a lot of things already that are so incredibly important, and I'm just honored to be here for a little bit and appreciate the opportunity. And so thank you for what you're doing. I sincerely mean that. It is incredibly important work, and we appreciate each of you. So thank you.
Thank you, Wes Ward. Thank you very much. As Melvin mentioned earlier, he talked about the brief history of the Partners Program, and the next person I get to introduce is going to talk to us even more and celebrate the 35th anniversary of the Partners for Fish and Wildlife Program. Matt Filsinger is the national team lead for the Partners for Fish and Wildlife Program since 2014. He has committed his career to private lands conservation and is entering his 19th year with the program, where he has worked at the field level, the regional, and national level. During his time as team lead, the Partners Program has invested over $374 million in congressionally appropriated funds, leading to over 15,000 project accomplishments and 2 million acres restored. He has led the team during 3 separate and distinct presidential administrations. He is honored to lead the women and men of the Partners Program who seek common sense, complex ecological problems. Filsinger holds a bachelor's degree in wildlife ecology from Oklahoma State University and a master's of business administration degree from Colorado State University. Matt and his wife, Denise, reside in Northern Virginia and have a daughter named Mason. Matt, thank you for being here.
All right, thank you. Yes, I'm extremely excited to be here. It's great to see some familiar faces, some family and friends that unfortunately we haven't been able to get together for a couple years. I did want to address our military veterans. I know next month is Veterans Day. We also celebrate those that gave all for Memorial Day in May, but my philosophy is every day is Veterans Day. So thank you, everyone who, for your military service, and honored to be here and follow those that have served. I have 3 parts today. We've got a video here showcasing our 35th anniversary. I've got a few slides talking about past, present, and future of the Partners for Fish and Wildlife Program. And at the end, I've got some awards for some incredible partnerships. So cue up the video here, and excited for you guys to be able to see this.
America. A vast expanse of forests, grasslands, wetlands, rivers, and an extraordinary diversity of wildlife. The nation, however, is facing a habitat crisis. More than half of the nation's wetlands have been destroyed. Nearly 75% of the nation's riparian habitats have been lost. 95% of our tallgrass prairie and longleaf pine forests no longer exist, and less than 2% of the country's rivers remain free-flowing. While we often think of wildlife habitat as wilderness or other public lands, the fact is that most wildlife habitat is on private lands. And because 2/3 of our nation's lands are in private ownership, landowners and working landscapes play a critical role in the conservation of America's wildlife. Long ago, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the agency tasked with conserving the nation's wildlife and habitats, recognized that success in their mission hinged on partnerships with private landowners. Rising to the challenge, visionaries within the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service started the Partners for Fish and Wildlife program in 1987. The approach is simple. Engage willing partners through voluntary habitat restoration and enhancement to conserve valuable fish and wildlife habitat on their land and in their communities. We make effective on-the-ground habitat conservation feasible by providing financial and technical assistance. Our local biologists work together with landowners and other partners to help plan and implement habitat projects, as well as measure success along the way. The one-on-one nature and the follow-through of the Partners program has led to its national recognition and wide-ranging support. Originating in the Prairie Pothole region of the Midwest, the Partners program is closely linked to the National Wildlife Refuge System, where employees saw the interest of neighbors in working beyond refuge boundaries, inspiring both public and private land conservation efforts. The response by private landowners was overwhelmingly positive, and Partners for Fish and Wildlife quickly began to spread across the country. Today, this initiative has grown into a $57 million nationwide program with 240 staff in all 50 states and territories. Since the start of the program, more than 60,000 landowners have worked with our biologists to restore more than 7 million acres of wildlife habitat. These cooperative efforts have contributed to the delisting, the downlisting, or have prevented the listing of 19 species under the Endangered Species Act. These include the greater sage grouse, Delmarva fox squirrel, fluvial Arctic grayling, Oregon chub, Louisiana black bear, and the New England cottontail. These partnerships also help the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service meet their goals of conserving and managing other species, such as migratory birds and fish, as well as plants. These success stories would not be possible without the partnerships developed with private landowners. In 2022, Partners for Fish and Wildlife celebrates 35 years of conservation partnerships on private lands. Today, the Partners program continues to refine our strategic approach to conserve species, connect habitats, and build resilient ecosystems. As part of our 35th anniversary, we will reinvigorate connections with our stakeholders, increase our relevancy with new partners, expand relationships with Native American tribes, create new urban youth partnerships, and build a culture of communicating science. The Partners for Fish and Wildlife family sincerely thanks those who have partnered up, rolled up their sleeves, and contributed to private lands conservation. If you have not yet experienced the power of conservation partnerships or visited a Partners for Fish and Wildlife project, we encourage you to contact your local biologist. All it takes is a phone call or an email to get started. We have come a long way in the past 35 years, and we look forward to continuing to partner with the outstanding community leaders and the private land stewards of our nation's land, water, and wildlife.
Yes, excellent, excellent. Yeah, just watching that reminds me how beautiful America really truly is. I do want to recognize a couple of staff members that I have that have helped me put this together. Joe Milmo here sitting in the front, and John Ansher, who's on detail with us from North Carolina. So thank you both very, very much for all your assistance in this. I've got a few quick slides here to really just kind of showcase again past, present, future. Always raised that, you know, you kind of always have to have an eye on the past, have a status check where you are currently, and an eye towards the future. So this is where we're headed. This is where we're at, and a little bit of our history. I know Melvin talked a little bit about the Partnership Fish and Wildlife Program and our history. I'm going to dive a little bit deeper on exactly when we started. Yep. No, I got it. So why does the Fish and Wildlife Service have a private lands program? There are 2.3 billion acres in the United States of America. 2/3 of those are privately owned. 1.5 billion, give or take, depending on what data source you go to. That dark green on that map, that's private lands. I asked our cartographer to put it in green. Green to me means go. There's a ton of conservation there. It just blows me away at the opportunity. Our tribal lands are shown in brown as well. But those acres are there, they're available. Again, just being able to see those visually is very impactful. So where did we start? As Melvin mentioned, the 80s, there was a whole bunch of things happening. We had historic drought in the Midwest. Farms were in high record bankruptcy. Wildlife populations were plummeting. And the federal farm bill came out in 1985, the first one. So we tailed off of that and started formally with our first appropriation in 1987. So again, 35 years of history. Completed 60,000 projects, excuse me, over 7 million acres of habitat, partnered with over 50,000 landowners, and leveraging ratio at 4-to-1, meaning that for every single federal program dollar we have, putting 4 non-program dollars into each and every single project. Huge, huge impact. Thank you again very much for your partnership. This is our budget history. We started off fairly modest over the last 20 plus years. We're sitting at $57 million. I did want to recognize, if he's here, Congressman Westerman's representative, Michael Morris. Michael, over in the corner, thank you. Wanted to recognize your attendance here. Appreciate it very much. We are authorized with program legislation under the John Dingell Act. We were authorized in 2019, so very specific Partners for Fish and Wildlife Act. Our cap authorization is $75 million. We're currently appropriate at 57.7. We have a little bit of room to grow there. So excited about some of the opportunities in the future. You can see the president's budget had us up 9.7 million. The House mark was 12.2 million and the Senate mark was 3.2 million. So there's a little bit of gap. We'll see what happens with Congress, but again, excited about the future. And these are base level funds. These are not even in addition to IRA and bill and some of the other funding pots you guys have heard about. A couple folks have engaged me on questions about inflation. What's it doing to the program? Everything costs more. I think every one of us in almost every sector of our lives can attest to that. Fence posts are twice what they are. Wire is twice what it is. Chemicals 3 times what it is. To keep up with inflation right now, our program actually needs to be over $80 million. We're sitting at 57.7. So the curve is outpacing our appropriations, and this is a tough time. But again, kudos to our staff who really are extremely strategic in their investments. Getting to strategic planning, we are predicated or based on this strategic habitat conservation model. We started our first strategic planning process in 2006, resulted in our first generation 5-year strategic planning process in 2007. So we're currently on our 4th one. It's been a guiding light for us. We end up having focal areas with focal species that we've identified, very organically driven process. We have a national strategic plan. We have 8 regional step down plans, and anchoring that, we have a 5-year summary looking back at previous generational accomplishments. So we feel like the architecture is there, and really the rubber meets the road, at that field level. But overriding us nationally, we have 3 strategic priorities: species conservation, habitat connectivity, and resilient ecosystems. Program goals, we have 5. We've kept these pretty true throughout each generation of strategic planning. We have goal 1, conserving habitat. 2 is broadening and strengthening partnerships. 3 is our improving information sharing and communication. 4 is developing our workforce, and 5 is ensuring accountability. At the end of the day, this is where we're focusing on those 2.3 billion acres, the 1.5 billion acres of private lands. These are our strategic focus areas. We have about 150 carved up across the nation. Again, doing what we can with limited resources, putting the right people in the right place at the right time. That is our motto, and very excited about that. This is our staff map. This is where we have our 240 people distributed across the country. Some of those logos actually are multiple people in, in one spot. But again, very excited about the distribution. We are looking at growing here into the future as well. Looking at the future, we have launched on an evaluation process in the Partners for Fish and Wildlife programs. We have 10 teams that we put together, 5 in externally focused teams, which are, working on issues that we think are more externally driven. We have 5 internal teams as well. Very excited about this. We feel like this is really going to set the direction and trajectory of the programs for the program for the next couple decades. So this is what we're doing. This is our re-engagement with the partners. And again, thank you to all the Partners for Fish and Wildlife staff and some of our external partners who are really driving this process. Again, the magnitude of what's going into this, we have 10 chairs, 10 co-chairs. We have 113 team members. That's 75 unique individuals. We have some people that are working on multiple teams. So we have all Fish and Wildlife Service regions represented, and we're trying to cast as big of a net as we can on the external partners. 35th anniversary awards. We couldn't do it by ourselves. I think we've heard that a lot here. I do have some award recognitions that I'd like to give out this morning. How we're going to do this because of the time constraints that we have, I've got a slide for each of the nominees. I've got a short description that I'm going to read off. Please stand for those of you that are accepting the awards. We'll sit back down, recognize you, sit back down. After all 10 award recipients have received their recognition, we're going to go over in the corner here, hand out the awards themselves, and take a group photo. For those of you that would like to do photos after, we've got some opportunities, a break, and some other things. So without further ado, I'm going to get into the awards. Our first award, nominated by Fish and Wildlife Service Region 1, which is covering the Pacific Northwest, is Lomacotsi Restoration Project. Lomacotsi Restoration Project has been an outstanding partner in the Cascade-Siskiyou ecoregion of the Rogue River Basin in Oregon. These are the ancestral homelands of the Shasta, Tacoma, and Athabascan-speaking people. These are the ceded lands of the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde, the Confederated Tribes of the Siletz Indians, and Cow Creek Band of the Umpqua tribes of the Indians. Lomacotski's team uses indigenous traditional ecological knowledge for ecosystem restoration on thousands of acres of forest and serve as a model for facilitating inclusive partnerships. Their stewardship supports habitat for the service's trust species and supports landscape level climate resilience through ecologically minded fuels reduction and restoration. Our sincere thanks to Lomacotsi, and accepting the award is Marco Bay, Executive Director. Marco, congratulations. Thank you. Nominated by Fish and Wildlife Service Region 2, which is our Southwest region, the National Association of Conservation Districts. The soil and water conservation districts across this country are folks that live, work, and represent the community, county, or districts where we work and live, and they understand what it means to be a partner in conservation. They got their start after the Dust Bowl, so they know what it means to restore, conserve, and protect the land and the people of this nation. The Soil and Water Conservation Districts are true partners. Accepting the award on behalf of the Association Conservation Districts are Debbie Hughes, our New Mexico Executive Director, and Tim Palmer, NACD past president. Thank you. Nominated by Region 3. Region 3 covers the Midwest, Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever. Pheasants Forever started in 1982, has been one of our closest and most trusted partners for decades, along with Quail Forever, which originated in 2005. In the field, it's always habitat first and logo second. Our partners biologists work with Pheasants Forever biologists on countless projects, and habitat is better for it. We work to shape programs and deliver large-scale initiatives and emerging priorities such as pollinator conservation, youth education, and diversity in our ranks. And we have fun doing it. Accepting this award is Tim Coffin, the Director of Field Operations for Quail Forever. Nominated by Fish and Wildlife Service Region 4, which is covering the Southeast, Arkansas Wildlife Federation. The Arkansas landscape looked a lot different 86 years ago when the Arkansas Wildlife Federation began. Since then, they have tirelessly fulfilled their mission of education and advocacy for fish, wildlife, and natural resources in a way that early conservationists probably could never imagine. From promoting and implementing voluntary conservation on private lands to rallying volunteers to move 10 tons of steel by hand to protect Ozark big-eared bats, Arkansas Wildlife Federation makes a positive difference. Thank you and keep up the good work. Accepting this award is Jim Taylor, Treasurer of Arkansas Wildlife Federation. Jim. Nominated by Region 5, Fish and Wildlife Service covering the Northeast, Ducks Unlimited. Thank you. We've been working with Ducks Unlimited on private lands for decades, effectively conserving habitat for multiple species. Undoubtedly, this work has led to more resilient and robust bird populations nationwide. In the Northeast, we're refocusing our collaboration efforts to restore tidal marshes in areas that highlight the significance of our work in urban communities. We feel the Fish and Wildlife Service DU partnership is poised to take the next step towards conservation excellence. Thank you. Receiving this award is David Martin, Arkansas volunteer for Ducks Unlimited. Was David? Thank you, David. Nominated by Fish and Wildlife Service Region 6 is the Rancher Stewardship Alliance. Rancher Stewardship Alliance, a rancher-led conservation collaborative, has successfully secured over $3 million in the last 5 years for conservation work in the sagebrush and grasslands landscape of Montana. Together with a partners program and other partners, they have restored over 20,000 acres of grasslands, developed sustainable grazing systems on 24,000 acres of expiring CRP lands, implemented over 90,000 acres of grazing systems in native range, and modified over 120 miles of wildlife-friendly fences. This is truly awesome. Accepting the award for Rancher Stewardship Alliance is Angel DeVries, Executive Director, and Rick Conklin, Director. Nominated by Fish and Wildlife Service Region 7, covering Alaska, is Kenai Peninsula Cooperative Invasive Species Management Area. Despite the ever-growing threat of invasive species, Alaska's future remains bright thanks to Kenai Peninsula Cooperative Invasive Species Management Area. This partnership has grown from a small group of local weed warriors to statewide leader in early detection, rapid response, partnership building, fundraising, and decision and planning support. The group consisting of local citizens, nonprofits, tribal entities, industry, government, and more. It serves as a model for success to be celebrated in Alaska and beyond. Our sincere thanks. Accepting this award is Kyra Wagner, the district manager of the Homer Soil and Water Conservation Districts. Kyra. Nominated by Fish and Wildlife Service Region 8, Nevada, California, and the Klamath Basin, Trout Unlimited. The Trout Unlimited Klamath program has been working with the Partners program to restore aquatic habitat in the upper Klamath Basin for more than a decade. The partnership has been instrumental in benefiting Lost River and short-nosed suckers, bull trout, and red band trout. They are leaders in restoration planning and prioritization efforts, securing funding for aquatic habitat restoration and implementing invasive species techniques like beaver dam analogs and diffuse source treatment wetlands. Incredibly impressive. Accepting the award on behalf of the Trout Unlimited Klamath program is our senior wildlife representative from Region 8, Susan Abel. So we have two headquarters nominees. The first one is the Natural Resources Conservation Service. The Partners program was born on 1987 on the heels of the establishment of the first federal farm bill passed in 1985. Since our inception, we have been inextricably linked with NRCS and have partnered with them to deliver countless wildlife habitat improvement projects across the nation. Our staff work closely to deliver financial and technical assistance which benefit people and the environment. It is an honor to recognize NRCS for their partnership. Accepting the award is James Tillman, our Southeast Regional Conservationist. Thank you, James. And last but not least, Partnerscapes. Since its establishment, Partnerscapes has been a leader in promoting private lands conservation at national, regional, and local scales. They are considered a trusted voice for working lands and bring common sense solutions to complex ecological problems. With a diverse board and membership, they bring an unmatched viewpoint and passion to the table. We are incredibly thankful for their partnership. Accepting the award, Jim Stone, Chairman, Steve Jester, Executive Director. So that concludes our awards in my presentation. Folks that receive those, if you don't mind moseying over here towards the corner, we've got the plaques themselves and we've got a photo opportunity. And again, later today, we will have some more opportunities for some photos for folks. So Jonathan, oh, got Steve. So folks, if you want to make your way over this way, I'd appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Well, I'm going to let Jim be in the picture because I've been told I've got a voice for radio, but also a face for radio. So we'll leave Jim over there, and he'll be joining me here on stage in a minute. First, boy, what a great group of speakers we had. Welcome from state, regional, and national leaders. I also want to recognize, I saw him in the crowd a minute ago, Arkansas Game and Fish Commission Chairman Bobby Martin is here. I met Bobby when I had the honor of coming up here back in May to participate in the award ceremony for landowners in Arkansas that the partners that we've all been hearing from during the field trip yesterday, and we'll hear some more from today, were involved in recognizing those landowners and thanking them for the work that they do. And a thank you is always important for me because one of my many conservation heroes, Tutta Libby Cruz from New Mexico, once told me that a lot of times people involved in these projects, including landowners and maybe even especially landowners, just like to hear thank you. So first of all, thank you landowners, conservation partners, and especially the state of Arkansas for the great experience we've had so far, the great work you're doing, both for your communities and for your nation. So thank you. So I was asked to address successes, or Jim and I were asked to address successes, challenges, and opportunities from the perspective of Partnerscapes. And I think for Partnerscapes, one of the major successes is that we are back together again after 2 years of not being able to gather, and that we are still here as an organization. A lot of organizations, nonprofit organizations, businesses, small businesses across the country felt a lot of stress over the last couple of years of the pandemic. And to me, from my perspective, it's just an accomplishment that or a success that we've made it through, and we're here and we're back together. Also success, I think, even though the pandemic changed the way we've done business, as we heard from our speakers this morning, the work that we do around people and relationships and partnerships is continues to be exceedingly important. And I think the need for partnerships and relationships and support for those that are out there trying to put those together and delivering on them every day is only going to be more critical as we move forward. The challenges are bigger, the opportunities are bigger. We're going to have to think bigger to meet that challenge locally, regionally, and nationally. A challenge that we are facing, I've heard about it a lot during our board meeting, heard about it talking to people on the tours. We heard Austin speak about it. You know, it's trying to find the skills and the people among the organizations that want to partner with landowners to get the work on the ground. I've been exceedingly impressed with the state of Arkansas since Joe Christophic first convinced myself and Bill Sproul to come over here and see what Arkansas had going on. And although Bill addressed the statewide conference of conservation districts and talked about how happy he was to be in Arkansas several times, and I don't know how much that was appreciated by the folks in attendance, but I can guarantee you that they will never forget Bill Sproul from Sedan, Kansas. And I think what Bill and I saw here in Arkansas that day has certainly been on display here in the state the last couple of days. And I think that's the way we're going to meet these challenges of capacity, is trying to help each other. Jim Stone has a tagline on his email that a quote from Teddy Roosevelt about, "It's amazing what we can get done when we're not worried about who gets the credit." And I think we heard that from James. We heard that from Cynthia. We heard that from everybody this morning. We're all in this together. It's not just your local community that's counting on all of us to do a better job together. It's our state, it's our nation, and it's our world. And we have to, I know for me, I'm always trying to figure out what Partnerscapes can do to help support that, because it's what you all do together as landowners and as partners. You know, there is no backup plan. There is no plan B. There is no alternative to keeping the lands and landscapes that we have productive for both people and for nature. There are a lot of opportunities, as we also have heard about over this course of this morning. The level of financial investment in conservation writ large is unprecedented, as James shared. The stuff that is on the horizon that could be here very quickly is also unprecedented, even though it'll become through different channels, as Austin talked about. Partnership and collaboration is going to be needed more than ever to deliver on the trust that the American people, through their elected representatives, have shown that they have by investing the level of resources that they have in the work that you all do together. We didn't talk a lot about trust with this group. It really is, I think, understood by everybody that trust is the most important thing, or really the bedrock of any sort of partnership, any sort of collaborative effort. And conservation moves, when you're talking voluntary conservation, which is what we're all here about, only moves at the speed of trust. And at the speed of trust is kind of like the speed of light. It's a barrier that you can't short stop, you can't jump over. It doesn't matter how much money there is, how much science there is, how much want to there is. You have to put the time in to build the trust and the credibility and the understanding between different perspectives to move these big efforts forward. And I think from Partnerscapes perspectives, that is the one area with which we can help. There are a lot of people that want to be better partners. There's even more people that come into this line, as James talked about. He's an introvert. You know, I was a very high level introvert when I started in this business, but I quickly learned that things don't get done if you can't relate to people, listen to people, build relationships with people. So we're hopeful that we can help those that come to this line of work, those landowners that might be hesitant to reach out and build relationships with different perspectives, to be more comfortable in building those relationships, giving trust a chance, and trying to find the overlap between goals and objectives and where we can all plug in to help keep our lands and our landscapes healthy and sustainable. So that is what we are going to be working on as an organization, trying to find what our expertise and what our knowledge can support in those efforts. And if you've got any ideas, any needs, if you have any epiphanies, we are more than willing to entertain them, because it's still difficult to operationalize a national trust building exercise, but that's sort of what we're on. So Jim, come on up. Well, you want the microphone? You can do it from there.
Good morning. I just want to say a huge thank you to all of you in Arkansas for giving us a place to tell a story. I want to maybe reflect back a little bit. 2006, we were given an opportunity to really tell us a different story than, I think, through a cooperative conservation conference. And the idea really came from my good friend, Greg Nidecker, about what does transferability of knowledge opportunity mean? And so in 2008, we had our first conference in Montana for, well, at that point, it was Partners for Conservation, but now Partnerscapes. And the thing that struck me, I think, with that conference was there were a couple of landowners in this room that took a chance. And Russell Davis and Bill Sproul came to Montana, and I'm not sure what was on their mind. I'm probably not sure what was on my mind at that point in time either, but we agreed to sit around the table and talk about the issues that really were important. And amazingly enough, it sounds really crazy after an event like this, that we found we had a lot in common. And I think those folks took a chance that day. And now you look around and our board of directors have taken a chance to just bring all the issues forward and look to partners how to solve those. And so as we look forward together, I'm just really proud of all of you that I don't see a lot of uniforms. And I think that's good because I think we've all come to the same place that we, looking at the big picture, we want to solve these issues. And it isn't about whether we're from an agency or we're a landowner, and we're going to do this together. So I really look forward to many, many years of this kind of cooperative conservation. Reese and my son Brady are here. That's really where it's at, right? It's going to be the younger generation. We're going to move along. What these folks are coming along, learning exactly what we need to see for the future. So just a huge passionate thank you to all of you that do this every day. We're going to be with you as landowners. So let's just keep moving forward. So thank you very much.
All right. Well, I do not think the morning could have gone any better. I really enjoyed the comments. I'm really looking forward to hearing the stories starting up right after break. But we're gonna go to a break now. Reconvene at 10:45. I would encourage you to take a look at the vendor tables outside. Don't forget to visit our silent auction over here in the front corner of the room. Thank you so much for your attention, and once again, reiterating Jim's message, thank you for all you do.